Welcome to our Cybersafe Digest Weekly Podcast, episode 18. Each week, we will unfold the most recent cyber attacks and will provide you with valuable insights on how to shield your business from these threats, along with practical steps and tips to enhance your cybersecurity.
Welcome to episode 18 of the Cybersafe Digest. I'm Martin Roberts, Managing Director of Newways, and I'm here with
Toby Stevenson, Chief Technology Officer at Newways.
Excellent. This week, Toby, I thought we'd talk about cyber insurance, how the market has changed over the last few years, and how it's moved from being people trying to sell it to you to people not wanting to sell it to you without you spending a lot of money first. And you've got a lot of experience in this area because you've been dealing directly with insurance brokers and insurance companies, helping some of our larger customers achieve the standards required.
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting observation that, as you say, a few years ago, it seemed as though insurance companies were falling over themselves to offer cyber insurance. They maybe felt it was a way of making some extra money for very little afterwards. But I think that the way that the threat landscape has changed has meant that an awful lot of insurance companies have been hit quite hard with payouts, particularly for organisations that perhaps didn't have sufficient protections in place. And what we've seen over the past couple of years is an almost onerous set of mandates being issued by certain insurers in order to qualify for gaining that insurance.
Yeah, I think what is absolutely clear to me is that not that long ago, buying cyber insurance was an alternative to actually do anything about cyber. So it would be, I may be at risk, but if I buy cyber insurance, if it all goes wrong, I can claim on it. The reality was, of course, is that you couldn't, because, as insurance companies do, quite rightly, I am sure, they would ensure that the clauses were there to make sure that you were protecting yourself somewhat. It would be, akin to buying insurance for your house against fire and leaving the gas on all the time and not installing any mitigating elements.
Yeah, definitely. I think the insurers are trying to protect themselves now and say some of the things that they ask for are pretty good common sense items, but I don't think they were there in the first instances. And as you say, it was almost an either or decision. And do I invest in cyber protections, or do I just invest in the insurance to be able to get some cash back if I do have a problem? But I think that the cost of a cyber attack now has just spiraled out of control because it's a relatively easy way for bad people to make a lot of money that, the insurance companies can no longer sustain that. I mean, we saw last year that certain insurers were stepping away from the market. They were no longer interested in trying to place cover for cyber insurance.
Yeah, and we've found our job and your job particularly in the last couple of years, Toby, has changed a little bit in that we actually pick apart the requirements that are being imposed on our customers to ensure that we are very precise about what actions need to be taken. Because what is true is the use of woolly language can lead potentially to a claim being null and void because it's been misinterpreted and the wrong actions put in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not all insurance companies are guilty of this, but I think in a lot of cases they don't really understand fully the subject matter, and therefore they can't really put direct requirements around it. So they resort to, as you say, this woolly language, this open to interpretation set of statements, which can actually be really quite dangerous. And we've worked on behalf of some of our clients to actually really interrogate the insurance companies to break it down and make sure that we are meeting the requirements as they expect them and as they intend them to be addressed, rather than just taking it at face value and then potentially having to argue the case for what we've done, and in an even worse case, them rejecting our position.
Well, I think one of the experiences that we've had relatively recently is that a software solution or a solution was proposed by the insurance company as being appropriate, but actually on our testing of it, it proved that it didn't meet the requirements after all, and then we had to put together an alternative proposal which did meet the requirements that the insurer demanded.
Yeah, exactly. So in summary, without going into too much technical detail, they basically wrote a requirement which was almost lifted straight off a particular vendor's website. But we found that solution to be completely inappropriate for the organisation that it was targeted at. It just didn't fit with their size or their technical layout. And so for varying reasons, it was just never going to happen. It was never going to be a viable solution for that organisation. And so we then have to then take you back to, okay, well, what exactly are you trying to mitigate against? What are you trying to protect? What do you need to see in order to satisfy this requirement? And it actually becomes quite enlightening, and it's actually helps in a kind of a strange way, because you kind of start to build this rapport with the insurance company, and so you actually get a lot more out of that relationship. It becomes less transactional. It becomes more of a partnership in kind of some kind of like weird way, because you are throwing ideas into the pot, and you're seeing which ones satisfy all of the stakeholders, not just the insurance requirement, but it has to be affordable, it has to be implementable, it has to be manageable by the organisation and their IT function, whether that's an internal department, whether it's an external service provider.
Yeah, and I mean, let us not forget that insurance is, you never really want to claim on your insurance, because if you are doing, things have gone badly wrong, and whatever type of insurance you buy. So it is a sort of a last resort thing. But working with your insurance company more closely, rather than just signing the bit of paper, accepting all the terms and conditions and paying over the money, is not, it may feel as though you're doing something constructive and protecting yourself, but actually working with the insurance company, working at what the demands actually are, if they're relevant, if they're appropriate to your organisation, involving, if necessary, a third party to take you down through that journey, is actually very, very useful indeed, because you will be better protected. Because let's face it, we would rather avoid being compromised from a cyber safe perspective rather than actually claim on the insurance.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the biggest risk that probably most smaller organisations face in terms of cyber insurance is accurately completing the form, because there's a lot of stuff in there that, if you are not from an IT background, will make not an awful lot of sense, and there's a temptation to overestimate your position, shall we say. And actually that's the worst thing that can happen. And and this is common sense, people know this, but we see it happen time and again. We see people that are filling in questionnaires, and they've answered affirmative to certain questions, and we say, well, you don't do that. Don't we? I thought we did. Well, you don't do that. And it's that gap of knowledge that can be quite dangerous. And so you could say yes to half a dozen things on an insurance form, and when you come to claim, the insurer will make sure that all those things were still in place that you said you were doing, and they'll quite quickly find out that probably wasn't the case, and that may then curtail any payments or support that they'll give you.
Yeah. And I'm just going to make a bit of a point here, which will sound like it's self-interest, but really, if you are an SME and you're working with an MSP, a managed service provider, or someone who looks after your IT for you, and you ask them to help you fill out your insurance documentation, they may well ask for some money for that exercise. And frankly, it'll be money well invested, because you'll get proper answers. If you get it for free, you either got a very generous MSP IT services provider, or they're not investing the right amount of time into it. It should cost you some money. Be prepared to pay it, because actually, in the event of a breach and a claim, you are more likely to be paid out, because the answers will have been given correctly and truthfully, factually, than actually you not doing it or doing it for free. So do invest that money. Which brings us quickly, actually, I'll just cover Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, Toby, which you know all about.
Yeah.
And there is an insurance element to that, isn't there?
There is, yeah. So if you there's some criteria on it. Basically, yeah, if you take Cyber Essentials accreditation, then you can get £25,000 of cyber insurance cover. Now you have to be below a certain size, so it's I think it's a turnover, you have to be under £20 million. You have to have certified your whole organisation. You have to be in the UK, but you can get then this free, this inclusive insurance, £25,000. So yeah, you can get something, but probably would say that it's only scratching the surface of what you potentially will need.
Yes, maybe for another podcast actually is what your insurance should do for you in the event, or can do for you in the event of a breach. All right, thank you very much for that, Toby. That's all really interesting stuff. I thought we'd just do a bit of a back to the future moment. You shared with me earlier this week the thing about the resurgence of our old friend, the USB stick.
Yeah, deja vu.
Yeah, it's back. Tell us all about it.
Well, yeah, there was an event last week talking around cybersecurity, and one of the takeaways from that was that there is an apparent upswing in the number of USB-derived cyber attacks, specifically attributed to nation-state activity. So this is where foreign and / rogue governments or agents of those entities are trying to target the national interests of another country or government. Yeah, sure. So, but essentially, yeah, what they're suggesting is that the use of USB sticks left around to look enticing and to encourage you to connect them into your computer is on the uprise, and that was something that was kind of popular. I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago as a thing. USB sticks being left in communal areas in the car park with things like salaries or secret projects or something that would entice you. So again, following all of these markers that a phishing email or a scam email has on it, these things that invoke a sense of curiosity, and because you found it, there may again be that time sensitive thing in you. Who can resist a USB stick found in the coffee room that says salaries 2024? Who could resist plugging that into their computer, right? And that's what they're saying. And the advantage, I suppose, for an attacker using a USB stick is it bypasses a lot of those perimeter protections that you have in place. So that email security, that web browser security, that firewall, they're all bypassed because the payload is on the USB stick. It's not traversing any networks to get to. So you take this stick and you plug it into your computer, and they're all bypassed. So you're then reliant on the protections that your computer itself has, which is is the endpoint security and the secure configuration on that machine. So yeah, I thought it was really, really interesting. And I think the other kind of take on it is not just the malicious code that may reside on these USB sticks, which there is a chance that an endpoint scanner would spot these and block them because they look like bad things. So EDR software, endpoint detection and response software, is behavioral based. Although it may not recognize the signature of the malicious file, it may recognize the behavior and categorize it as suspicious and stop it from running. But the other thing that we see is, I guess there's a couple of different terminologies, but what we often refer to them is rubber duckies. And what these are. Hang
on, Toby. Can you just say that again, just for the benefit of our listeners?
Yeah, rubber duckies.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
As in the thing that goes in the bath.
Oh, yes, indeed.
So a rubber ducky is essentially a keyboard emulator. And so when you plug it into your computer, it will execute a pre-configured set of keyboard commands to go and run something on the computer as though you were sat in front of it yourself, typing away. So it's kind of like a keyboard macro, shall we say.
Yeah, okay.
Now, the advantage with a rubber ducky is that it's not running any malicious code. So the antivirus is never going to see it doing anything bad. And there is a chance that the EDR may not, depending on what is being done and what is being asked of it. So it can be quite dangerous in that respect. Then you may say, well, we've got USB drives, that's fine. Technically, it's not a USB drive. It's not a USB data device. It is a keyboard. And unless you've got some kind of policy in place that only allows specific keyboards and mice into your organization, a rubber ducky can be quite a dangerous thing if it gets connected to your computer, because it will go at lightning speed to run a series of commands. And typically what happens is it will go and run some kind of script or a series of commands through PowerShell or something like that will open a backdoor for an attacker to get in. But because there's not actually been any malicious code introduced into the system, again, it kind of tries to sidestep a number of protections that you may have in place. So already we've missed the email filter, and we've missed the firewall, and we've missed the web filter because we've introduced it through USB. They're now trying to sidestep the security software that's on the machine by not introducing any malicious code. It literally is commands that you or I could type on the computer if we wanted to do a particular thing. So it's quite an interesting, almost like a blast from the past, but also forward thinking. Nothing's ever new; it's always reinvented. I think that's definitely what this is here.
Well, I guess the main takeaway I have with that is that I shall never look at Neville, my very own rubber duck at home, in the same light again, I have to say. Okay, that's fascinating stuff. So if you pick up a USB stick, don't put it in your machine. Take it to your IT department, take it to your provider. They can scan it in a safe way. And actually, there's another way people use these sort of plug-in devices, which may seem quite innocuous. You had a fascinating story a couple of years ago, actually, Toby, about something you learned at a conference about a giveaway people were giving about cables, converters, and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I suppose it kind of follows on from the advice around the USB. So, people go to a conference, go to an event, and there's a whole bunch of vendors in an exhibitors hall, and they have their giveaways, their T-shirts and their data sheets, and they quite often used to give away USB sticks. And of course, that kind of got frowned upon because, well, who knows what's on that USB stick? And normally they were really tiny, so actually they weren't really worth anything. Yeah. So what the exhibitors started to do was give away things that were more useful, like charging cables, and we've all seen those ones that have got lots of different ends on for lots of different kinds of phones. They're really quite useful. But that same kind of mentality that we spoke about with the rubber ducky can actually be embedded into one of these cables. So they're referred to as OMG cables. Oh my goodness, right? And they do the same kind of thing, but they are so convincing. They look just like the OEM cables. So they look like the Apple ones. They look like the ones that come with your Samsung phone. You can even have the Samsung branding on if you are that way inclined. But likewise, they've got your favourite vendor's name on it. And we are all guilty of this, going to shows and events and conferences and picking up all the swag that's available. But very rarely do we perhaps think about, is there something in this cable that we need to be concerned about? And it's a real challenge to how do you solve for these things? But again, it's another attack vector, and it is something that has been known to happen, that intentionally or otherwise, some malicious cables get into a pot of good ones. When you see them, they're often in a box or in a cage at the side of the stand. Well, people see they're just generic white cables or something like that. If you drop a few of your own in there, as you're walking around, who's to stop you? You drop them in, mush them around a bit so they're mixed up, they're not sitting on the surface. It's not quite clear whether it's an unbranded one. It doesn't matter, I picked it up. You don't interrogate to that degree when you've left the conference. It's only when you get home and you're looking at your haul, you say, I've got a charging cable, great, I'll give that some to the office, or I'll use it myself, or whatever.
Amazing. So general principle is don't plug anything into your computer which you really don't know anything about, if you don't know its provenance. And the provenance really is has it come from your IT department, from your IT provider, or some other safe place. Okay, right. To finish off, we've got acronym of the week. And this week I'd like to talk about, it pronounced SIEM, but it is actually SIEM. And Toby, we rely on you for this succinct explanation of what SIEM is. Yes.
So SIEM is a security incident and event management platform or tool. And probably the easiest way to describe this is it's like a black box for your environment. The correctly deployed SIEM will be pulling in data and telemetry of activity from virtually everything on the network, from your PCs and your servers to your networking equipment, your firewall, cloud environments. They'll all be fed into this huge database, and it can then be used to flag out activity or behaviour that perhaps warrants further investigation. So if it can be used in one of two ways. The first way, it can be used as a form of threat hunting tool. So you can pull out all of this data from all of your PCs and your endpoint servers, firewalls, networking gear, 365, all that kind of stuff, and it all gets dumped into this big bucket. And the SIEM solution will then have a series of rules and algorithms that it will run against all of this data, and it'll start to stitch things together so that it may be that individually benign activities, when combined, actually look something more malicious. So if there's an activity on a PC that shows failed login attempts, and then all of a sudden we then see a password reset or a new user being created, and then we then see some unexpected attempts to log in to 365. Individually, they may not necessarily ring any alarm bells, but stitched together, they may be a suggestion of something more insidious occurring. And that's one of the things that a SIEM solution can help with. It can help surface the jewels in this, all of this data, the things that really need to be looked at and investigated. And yes, you need people to do that. And most SIEM solutions will require the use of another acronym, a SOC, a Security Operations Center, and a series of security analysts to try and review that data. And it can be quite a big task. And in a way, you are searching for that needle in a haystack. You are searching for that one bad thing that may be occurring, and you don't know where and you don't know when. So that's the first use case for a SIEM solution. The second use case is, again, it is used as the black box. It is used to walk backwards from an incident to show all the things that happened, so one can understand how they got in, what happened, where did they go, what did they touch, and try and help build a picture of what's occurred. And again, very, very useful in that respect. Obviously, you can only go back as long as you log data for. So again, there's a conversation with SIEM solutions to say, how long do you keep the data for? Because, of course, the longer you keep the data, the more expensive it gets. As you can imagine, the amount of data that gets thrown into these solutions is huge. If you're pulling it from every PC and server and networking equipment and 365, lots and lots of data. But it allows you to go back and almost forensically piece together what's gone on. And normally these solutions would not be on your network. So if your network gets trashed by an attacker, your black box should remain unaffected.
Okay.
So you've got that ability to pick it back. So it's a really, really useful tool, and it's kind of twofold. It's kind of that threat hunting or suspicious behaviour detection, and then there is this forensics review of piecing together what's happened. Should there have been an incident? So that's SIEM and what it does.
Thank you very much for that, Toby. Well, folks, that's about it for this week. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much, Toby. Very much appreciated. As we've always said, this is focused. This whole podcast is for people who are not necessarily do IT, but are responsible for IT. There is a lot more resources available on cybersafe.co.uk. And if you need to ask some questions without going through your normal channels, whatever, you want some independent advice and such like, again, you'll find resources there. I'll repeat that, cybersafe.co.uk. And we're always happy to answer things. As you can tell, we like talking about cybersecurity and things and such like. So thank you very much, Toby. Great to see you again. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, everyone. We've reached the end of episode 18 of our Cybersafe Digest Weekly Podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and to make sure you don't miss out on our future episodes, hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple or Google Podcast. For more cybersecurity wisdom and resources, head over to our website at cybersafe.co.uk. See you next Thursday.